Hi, welcome back to our podcast on week 4. Today's episode, we're focusing on chapter 4, designing quality classroom assessments. So, this chapter shifts from us doing the practical side of assessments to how we actually design assessments and give us meaningful information about how students learn instead of just something that we put in a grade book. The chapter has 3 targets. This time. So the first target is select the appropriate method or methods to assess specific learning targets. The second one is follow the steps in the assessment planning process and create the assessment blueprint. And the last one is blueprint assessment task with students' assessment for learning in mind. So each of us will take these targets and explore further in our discussion. Again, this chapter directly connects to what we've already been learning and going through in the past few podcasts, but now we're just going to build on that foundation and keep going. I'm Selena Galloway, and I'm joined with my group and my peers, Michael Hoyas, Andy Crudup, and Melissa Heath. And we're looking forward to breaking down this chapter with us. So let's get started.
All right. Hi, my name is Indy Crudup. I'll be doing the learning, or our first learning target, which is select the appropriate method or methods to assess specific learning targets. So one of the first things this chapter emphasizes is the assessment quality. Is that assessment quality starts with clarity. Before we even think about test questions or rubrics, we have to ask, who is this assessment for, or how will the information be used? The chapter breaks this down into sorry 4 keys to quality assessment, which are clear purpose, clear learning targets, sound design, and effective communication. So basically, if we don't know why we're assessing or what we're assessing, then the assessment won't tell us anything meaningful, no matter how polished it looks. All right. Next, the chapter introduces assessment options, where we're reminded that there are no such thing as one size fits all assessments. Instead, the book outlines 4 main types. Those types are the selected response, which is like multiple choice or matching, written response, which includes short answer or extended response, performance assessments, where students demonstrate a skill or create a product, and personal communication, such as conferences, questioning, or discussions. The big takeaway here is that each method serves a different purpose, and none of them are inherently better than the other. What matters is how well the method matches the learning target. All right, so matching the assessment methods to your learning targets. This chapter is really the heart. This is really the heart of this chapter. The authors explain that learning targets fall into 4 categories. We have knowledge, reasoning, performance skills, and products. Um, sorry, I had to go over what I wrote real quick. All right, so as teachers, we often get tripped up from this. We tend to default to what's easiest to grade instead of what's best. What shows the best learning for our students. Um, for example, selective response works well for checking knowledge, but it's a weak choice for assessing skills or products. Reasoning is better assessed through written responses, performances, or discussion because students need space to explain their thinking. And performance skills and products almost always require performance assessments. You can't truly measure those with a multiple choice test. So the message is pretty clear. The learning target should drive the assessment method, not the other way around. And with that, I'm going to pass it to my fellow group mate for learning target 2.
Right. Thank you very much. So I'm going to speak a little bit about learning target 2, which is follow the steps in the assessment planning process and create an assessment blueprint. So learning target 2 in this chapter is really pushes us to be more intentional about assessment design. The authors introduced the assessment planning process as a way to shift assessment from something we assemble at the end of instruction to something we plan deliberately at the very beginning. So the process starts by identifying that the learning target and classifying its type, as we've already spoken to from Indy. And so this step really matters because assessment methods are not really interchangeable. Um, if we don't know whether we're assessing knowledge, reasoning, or performance skills or product, it becomes really easy to just choose an assessment that looks appropriate on the surface, but doesn't really capture student learning very accurately. And the next step is clarifying the purpose of the assessments. Um, is this assessment supposed to be formative, meaning like inform instruction and support learning, or is it to be summative to document and the learning at the end of instruction? Um, the purpose shapes everything that follows, from the method chosen to how much evidence is going to be needed. From there, the assessment blueprint functions as like a planning tool that brings all these decisions together. The blueprint helps teachers decide what evidence will be collected, how much evidence is enough, and how different learning targets will be represented in the assessment. What I find important is that the blueprint helps prevent two common assessment problems. First, it reduces misalignment, where the assessment measures something different from what is taught. The other assessment problem is that it reduces that over-reliance on a single assessment method, which really can distort how much we as teachers understand about our students' learning. And the authors are really clear that the blueprint is not the assessment itself. It's a way of love you, my dog. It's a way of thinking that supports accuracy, fairness, and clarity. Um, and really, so like by slowing teachers down and forcing these decisions um, to make these decisions intentionally, the assessment planning process it helps really to ensure that assessments actually reflect what students were expected to learn. And so this sets it real nicely to for the next learning target, where Melissa will talk about how blueprints can be used not just for planning, but as tools for students themselves, as part of assessment for learning.
Thank you, Michael. And as he said, I have learning target 3, which is the using an assessment blueprint with students as assessment for learning. And it builds directly on everything that Michael just talked about. It also pulls from what Indy talked about with that the assessments have clear purpose, clear targets, strong design. So the blueprint helps us do all of these things. And like Michael said, it's part of the planning. So this helps us teachers to match things better and understand like what we're actually testing them on. So a big idea from the reading that I read was that the assessment methods must match the type of the learning target. So Michael talked about that a little bit, but when you give it to the students in the blueprints, so the way that helps students is that they fully understand what they're being asked. So the author does remind us that if the method and targets don't match, the evidence can be misleading. So that can stray us away from grading the students properly and fully understanding their content level. So the blueprint also does something, and this is important to me, and it is on fairness. So I do a blueprint kind of more in the side of like a rubric. You can do blueprints for multiple choice questions as the book talks about, but for me, I'm more rubric based because it's project based. So this really resonated with me. So it helps to give a proper weight to the most important goals instead of just like minor facts or minor elements. And it helps to improve instructional decisions. So, as we're planning, like Michael said, to start out with, we can use this blueprint to better understand what we need to teach students with the focus of the lesson. And when we go to grade with these, it can also help to organize our understanding of student knowledge. So, are they missing a knowledge, reasoning, skill problem? And that will help us as teachers to reevaluate, reteach if necessary, and move on throughout the lesson. And sharing this blueprint from the beginning with students definitely makes sure that the expectations are clear, the learning targets are clear, they know what they're being asked and what they're being expected to learn and understand. Um, they know what matters, and it gives them a better understanding. And while the book didn't talk about this too much, I feel like it gives students a bigger sense of like responsibility and like they're in charge of their grade. Because if they can go through that blueprint or rubric, they can pretty much be able to tell, hey, I missed this part. But overall, a blueprint protects the quality of our assessments. It improves the fairness that we have with them, and it helps both us and our students to remember to focus on the major parts and not, because I know I get sidetracked onto small details sometimes. So that that. Is there any type of blueprint rubric that anybody uses in their classroom right now?
Well, first of all, I like rubrics, period, because I'm a project-based class as well, because you can give a range. Like, 10 points total for this section, but you'll get 3 points if you include this. You'll get, so many points if you include this. So it, like you said, it gives students like the responsibility of what their grade is. And then also with my class, with it being a project based, we can work on it all semester. So like if you turn in this part and like I break it down in parts, if you turn in this part and you didn't get the score that you wanted, you have the opportunity to go back and fix it. So that's how I implement my blueprints. I mean my rubrics for my projects. Well,
Yeah, I
overall
even
big projects.
Yeah, I even use rubrics on just. I mean, I'm not in math. I don't have a lot of projects, and so, but I do inform students how I plan to grade when I talk about show their work, because the answer is worth something, but the work is worth something as well. And so I let them know it's like when I see this is I don't grade like I don't subtract. I always add. And so I'll say something like, I see this written down. This is plus one. This is plus one. This is plus one. Then you have your answer, so that the students are aware that I need to see particular things for them to get the credit for showing me that they understand whatever the process of whatever the algorithmic thinking might be. So yeah, I'm a big fan of not necessarily. I don't know. I've never called them rubrics. I just more like I would tell them how I'm going to grade stuff. But I suppose yeah, that's rubric thought processes. Even though I'm really asking to kind of just do a process, a really a knowledge type question. Yeah.
I
Yeah, I was
think
gonna
that's
say
really
mine.
good for math because that way you can like we used to have to break it down, and now they got so many tools where they can cheat. If you break it down, you can see where you went wrong. Like even
Mhm.
if you don't get the answer, but you went through all the steps, you can go back and see where you went wrong. When I do computer science, when we're breaking down binary numbers, you have to show your work. So that's not something that they used to doing because they used to just going to whatever and finding the answer. But so that's the only one part that I liked about computer science was actually binary numbers because it felt like old school math. I have to break it down. So I like that you use that for math classes.
Yeah, I was gonna say mine is just like Selena's and Melissa's because mine is more project based. So I use a lot of rubrics in mine.
Yeah.
Kind of using a rubric without using a rubric. I like that plus one. Like if all math, I might have to introduce that to our math teacher. And maybe that'll make the kids work a little hard. I'm gonna mention it to our math teacher.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I mean, it's really interesting because it connects with this chapter. But I've noticed that the kids know exactly what I'm be looking for. So there's no mystery of like how much work do I have to show or what it is. Like I've told you, I need to see this. If we're I don't know doing some kind of factoring and whatnot. I was like, I need to see these pairs. I need to see that you did the work to see that they added or subtracted to get to the right value. I need to see you put these things in binomials properly. That all that stuff. I want to see these things in the process because. The answer isn't as important to me as the concept. Um, like I need you to know what it is you're supposed to be doing, not just because math is one of those things where you could just get lucky and make a number of mistakes and get it right regardless. I mean, and it's like, that doesn't matter. I don't want you to just get it right. I want you to know what you're doing.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
I
a
will
lot.
say I was that math student.
Well, the
okay, I
last
Yeah.
guess
thing
moving
I
into our
will
Go
Oh,
ahead, Melissa. Go ahead, Melissa.
I was just gonna say the last thing I was gonna add to it is at my school they're pushing us to add the Bloom's taxonomy and specific wording like apply, um, recall, understand, and I can see using a blueprint really well with that. So I was just gonna add that to it and then transition us into our reflection questions.
Moving on to reflections.
I think that is on me. So the most convincing and useful ideas. So the most convincing, useful idea I found in the chapter is how they're framing the assessment blueprint as a tool for not just the teacher, but also as a planning tool, but also for the student as a learning tool. Um, and like in math, it's real easy for assessment to feel like a surprise for some students, because they might have done some practice problems and they might have participated in discourse or whatever and followed along their lessons, and then they walk into the test or the quiz, whatever it might be, whatever we're doing, and they don't know what is expected of them. Um, and the blueprint really kind of addresses that kind of problem. It forces the teacher to be really explicit about what counts as evidence of learning. Like, I was just speaking to earlier about the pluses and whatnot. Um, like the students are aware of if they're asked to recall or explain or apply a procedure or connect right ideas with multiple representations, whatever it might be. And so, what I find really compelling about is how there's this transparency for the students so they can prepare. And so instead of, studying like we tended to do, like when I was going through school, was just, you do problems over and over and over again, at random and just hope you get it right, when it comes time for your assessment. The students can really like align their studying with the type of thinking that the assessment's going to really require. And so, it supports really good engagement rather than like really deep engagement rather than like surface level practice. And so, um, and again, from the like teaching perspective, it helps protect against the issue of the using the same assessment method for every type of learning. Because like we're real big on some multiple choice questions and then like some blanks, some free response, a big blank paper. And so if the goal is fluency, maybe like a long written explanation is not really necessary. And so it helps make sure that we're really matching the method to learning. Um, And so, like, what makes the idea feel useful is that it doesn't really require changing what we teach. It just changes how I plan. It just sharpens the alignment between like the targets and the instruction and the assessment. They all kind of align together. And so, when that alignment is really visible to the students, the assessment becomes less about guessing what the teacher wants and more about demonstrating context. So, I'm kind of curious, what do y'all think about this in your context? And y'all have the same you three have the same context, which is different than mine, but how often do your students in your classroom really know what kind of thinking and assessment's going to ask them?
They don't know it all.
And even if you tell them, they still don't know.
Exactly. They don't know it all. I post it every day and they still can't tell.
Uh,
I
Yeah,
try to do interactions like questioning why we're going through the lesson. I'll stop and ask them. So, like my sports level 2 class does a little bit better than my sports level 1. So,
mhm.
just that actual having a classroom discussion and asking them.
yeah, and I use a tool called Genially. It's an interactive presentation, and I have like little practice questions, drag and drop, categorization, little puzzles that they like take screenshots of their completion so I can see like, hey, they did it, or if they're really struggling, they can tell me that they're really struggling and go back and things like that. So
I was gonna say I just use Blookits at time. Y'all know what those are. I use
Yeah.
Blookits. Hey, they do. That will hold their attention. I promise you. They love that. It becomes a competition. But they learn the content too at the same time. So
Yeah.
it works. So
I
Okay,
I'll use
so I need to start using that. I know other teachers that use it. I just haven't got onto it to
oh
figure
yeah,
it out
kids
how
love
to
that.
I'm
book
gonna
it.
be honest with y'all. Make sure, because like I had to for my beginning teacher, I had to do a whole presentation about like gamification in the classroom, and my biggest suggestion is actually Gimkit, because Bookit they don't need the correct answers, and the leaderboard is based on how well they do in the actual game. So I've started using more And I mean, it is whatever you want, but I know like a lot of the teachers at my school didn't realize that they don't need a correct answer to get to the game. So
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
might
that's one.
help you out with but GimKit, they don't get the little like resources unless they get the question correct. So it forces them to actually read the question and try.
Yeah,
What
That
I
about
was
noticed the same
Kahoot?
thing with that, and yeah, I don't use Kahoot because it's speed based, and I don't find that students being able to answer it fast means they know anything because you can just guess and get things fast. I mean, so it doesn't help, and it penalizes those students who understand but are slow processors, because they'll never win, but they'll probably get all the questions right because they're too slow. So yeah, yeah, we got to be careful about some of the gamification things, but um. I'm big. I do use like Jeopardy or whatever. If I need to, I'll have like a little Jeopardy board if I want to do something. But yeah, gamification is hit or miss sometimes with some of the online things. Oh, I'm over here drinking water. And
I
moving
u-
on to the next thing. Oh, go
okay, I
ahead.
was
I'm
gonna say
sorry.
I utilize whiteboards a lot. Like we have individual whiteboards, and I'll just do like a game like that, with
Yeah.
groups or whatnot if they got the right answer, so they can kind of like talk to each other and figure out the
Mhm.
answer. And then it's not based on who gets it first; it's just who gets it right. And then of course they want a snack with it. So
Oh yeah, food. You got food. You their best friend.
Oh
I
yeah,
found that
food
out
is
the hard way.
the great motivator. Yeah, that food.
students come to my class. It's not even in my class. Miss G, you got snacks?
Yes, every day. It's pretty. You got some food.
All
All right.
right.
Well,
Well,
I'll pick up. You want me to go?
yep. Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
So
Yes, it's on you.
all right. So I'm gonna pick up on the next question, which was how does this chapter align with or challenge your own beliefs about teaching and learning? So for me, this chapter strongly aligns with my beliefs about teaching and learning, especially the idea that assessment should be intentional, purposeful, and centered on student growth. Sorry if y'all hear my kids going crazy in the background. uh, Growth rather than convenience. Throughout the chapter, there's a strong emphasis on starting with clear learning targets and using assessment as a tool to support learning, not just to assign grades. That really reflects how I approach my classroom. One part of the chapter that stood out to me was the focus on matching assessment methods to learning targets. So in my digital media slash visual design class, whichever you want to call it, I've turned that I've learned that traditional quizzes don't always tell the full story. Like they don't always work in that class because that class is more of a project base. So the quizzes are great for if I want to like multiple choice quizzes. It's great if I want to test them on like principles, like the design principles or balance or contrast and stuff like that. And vocabulary is good for that, but it doesn't show whether students can actually apply those concepts. Instead, so I use design projects where students create flyers or social media graphics and intentionally apply those principles. Seeing their design choices and having them explain their reasoning gives me, much more meaningful evidence of learning. This chapter also challenged me to reflect on how intentional I am during the planning stage. While I value performance based and formative assessments, the assessment planning process reminded me of the importance of slowing down and fully thinking through the purpose and evidence needed before designing an assessment. Overall, this chapter reinforced my belief that effective teaching depends on assessments that are aligned, meaningful, and student centered. And it pushed me to be even more intentional about using assessment as part of the learning process, not just the end of it. Does anybody have anything to build off of that?
Oh, okay. So I just move right on in then to reflection three. Which strategy or idea for this chapter would you feel most confident in implementing? And for me, one of the ideas from the chapter that's most useful was the assessment methods that should match the learning target and be planned intentionally. So like with me being a new teacher coming in and we use Canvas, we can always go to Commons and pull out a whole modules of everything what previous teachers done. But I did that my first semester, and then I find myself adjusting those. So I don't really basically use those quizzes or those tests that they give. I kind of do it based off of what I teach because I done changed the lessons now. Now that I'm in my second year, I use it as a guide, but I also just take the blueprint and then I create my own assignments, and then that way like feedback that I get from my assignments are more, and the assessments that I get are more tailored to what we're doing. So like I said, in my class, students, we work toward a final project throughout the semester. So at the end of the semester, they have to do a full PBM is what we call it. So what I do so they can get a test grade, since we don't necessarily do tests, is I break that PBM down into 5 parts. So let's say it's supposed to be a PowerPoint or Google slide presentation. So for part one reflects modules 1, 2, and 3. So when we finish modules 1, 2, and 3, now we're going to have a assessment on it. But the assessment is the outline of part one. So you're going to outline your part one of your PBM. No slides. This is just straight outline and giving me each part. And I use that as like an assessment grade. So then at the end of after you've done all 5 outlines, as we continue throughout the chapters, then you put them together and make one presentation. So it makes the presentation easy because all you're doing is basically taking your information from your outline and making a PowerPoint presentation with it. So what this chapter helped me see is that I'm actually blueprinting the assessment with learning in mind. So each part of the project, lines up with specific targets, like I said, with the modules, and then the assessment method matches what students are expected to do because it's basically on your specific event. So it's not like everybody's answer is going to be different because it's going to be tailored to what your event is that your project is on. So it's tailored to the individual. So everybody's answer is going to be different. This structure also supports assessment for learning. Students are not just being judged at the end, they're getting feedback along the way. Like I said earlier, they can turn it in with the rubric, and I can let them know what they're missing in their outline. Once they know what they're missing, when they do their final, they can add those parts in, and then their grade will increase. So, again, that gives them some type of control over what their grade is. Now, if they want to settle for the bare minimum, then they can just settle for the bare minimum. I also noticed that this approach helps with motivation. So they was like, oh, like what I got to get a better grade. So they do those type of things. So I kind of like the way I love teaching project-based classes, and I'm glad that they added a sports 2 level to my curriculum. Let's see. So just going back to my notes, the chapter it did reinforce to me that good assessment design starts with clear targets and choosing the method that shows best by learning. So for me, this chapter felt practical because it validated that I'm already doing stuff that's going to help and understand why it works. It's not just project-based learning. The assessment is planned intentionally and supports learning, not just to produce a final grade. Any comments on that?
I fully support that as a fellow project-based CTE class.
Must need to get some more projects in my class or something so I can be like y'all one day.
That's all right. Well, so I have the reflection question number 4, which is the uncertainty or hesitation. Although all of us have shown a want, desire, or already implementation of blueprints, rubrics, and because we're project based, and then we got a math person over there, and but it's all right. No, the hesitation is for me necessarily. It is that I am a beginning teacher. And like Selena talked about, like you get stuff from the previous teachers, but you want to change it, make it more like your own, and that takes a lot of time. So to be able to really know what you're going to fully test them on, can be really, really hard, because you got to set up the project first, and sometimes you're just running out of time. And like sometimes I make my lesson plan the night before, and that would not be enough time to set up a proper like blueprint for them to follow. I definitely feel like that's my hesitation and uncertainty. Um, but I feel like as I get more years in, it will come more naturally. Does anybody else have any other or similar hesitations with the blueprints?
I'm the
Oh, I
same with you.
completely understand with them
A
lesson
lesson
plans. Like,
plan. 'Cause I've
yes,
done it the morning of. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
in the
So
morning when you get there early, yes, I've changed it up. So
yeah, so you're not alone on that one.
I'll tell you this. I don't know how many years y'all got, but
Two.
encroaching
Yes, sir.
encroaching on 20, yeah, encroaching on 20, it's like, I don't do lesson plans no more because like I already know what I'm talking about. So it's like at this point it's like, I would need to go back and start having to write a whole bunch of stuff down and start planning stuff and this to kind of get these things, which has now become the hesitancy. Because I'm like teaching the class for, you know, 10, 15 years, like a single course for that long, the
Oh, you
at least the
got it.
process. Yeah, it's going in there
Yeah.
business as usual. Like you just running through it. And so like, but this is like, all right, so now I gotta step back and not now, but like over the summer, probably. If I get some time, if they pay me, especially, but to go ahead and do that kind of stuff, to kind of go through and be like, all right, so let me kind of plan some of these units out a little bit, do my, you know, my reverse and reverse design, um, to kind of think about these things more in depthly. I think right now is just, maybe reframe the summatives and then do like piecemeal. Just kind of, reframe my summatives a little bit, to kind of make sure that I'm much more explicit with things. And then, in future semesters, kind of do it a little bit at a time. But yeah, um, going back to writing lesson plans, I ain't trying, I
They're
ain't trying
trying
to
to
do that.
require us to do it now because
Shoot,
our school is 1 point away from like being a grade, like we're a D, so we're 1 point away from being a C. So now they implement lesson plans that we have to put on a share drive.
mm, yeah.
Mm,
When I was
yeah.
when I was at Western Guilford, they tried that, and I was like, well, my test scores tell me that I don't gotta do none of that, so I'm not doing it. I was like, so my scores are better than everybody else's. So I mean, I must be doing all right. My growth scores is nice. My achievement scores is good. So leave me alone. My kids are learning.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then I also throw back on black. And then how many math teachers y'all got bring out the door anyway? If I leave, who you got? I bet.
That part.
Not the threats.
So no, so no.
Yeah.
Again, I'm getting cocky in my years. I wouldn't have said
Well,
it the first few years, but
you've been there long enough, so you can.
mhm.
Yeah, I ready to close it out.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I think
Yeah, I was like, we might want to close.
that
Oh,
was a good discussion we had, guys.
Yeah, I
I
think this
agree.
one
it was.
actually we could relate to it more.
Mhm.
So, okay, I'll go ahead and close us out. So, as we wrap up chapter 4, I think our main takeaway is that good assessments are designed, not thrown together, even though some of us might do them at the last minute, like lesson plans, but we actually put more attention onto the assessment part. When we're intentional about matching learning targets with the right assessments, the information we get actually help us teach better. So we don't have to go, we can go back and see what needs to be retaught. So again, assessment isn't just about grading, it's about gathering the right evidence support learning. So thank you for listening to us. Again, I'm Selena, and I appreciate Michael, Indy, and Melissa for helping us express this chapter. We'll see you next episode.